Warning! The following video contains massive spoilers throughout the Zelda franchise. The Zelda series are full of characters, but some of those characters can be a massive headache. So much that I can make a top 15 of them, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm not counting characters that learn their lesson at the end of the game, so as intolerable as some characters were at the beginning of the game, they became much more likable later on. So no Midna, no Lineback, no Groose, and no Mito. And I know I complained about Demise earlier, but I don't hate him as much as I used to, considering how most of my complaints were being easy, which doesn't automatically ruin the fight. And I don't care if some of these characters are meant to be funny. That doesn't mean that I'm going to automatically find them funny. And there will be some characters on this list that some people happen to like, so don't act like mindless sheep and agree with me for the sake of agreeing with me, unless you actually legitimately hate that character. And one last thing. Prepare your eardrums because there's going to be a lot of raging in this video. So with that said, let's begin. I've made it clear in the past that Twilight Princess is my favorite Zelda game. The gameplay, music, story, graphics, and bosses are all some of the most fantastic in any game I've ever played, though some things in the game distract me from how much I love that. For example, what the heck did they do to the Postman? In Majora's Mask, the Postman was kind of cool. I mean, yeah, he had a bit of an attitude problem, but that was actually kind of entertaining to watch. Here, on the other hand, he looks stupid, and must he make the dumbest sound every time he gives you a letter? Does his job specifically state, whenever you're delivering a letter you have to make the dumbest sound? I get that it's a reference to an item jingle, but he doesn't do it any justice. He makes it sound annoying. And whenever he visits you, he has to keep interrupting your gameplay in order to deliver the letter. I wouldn't mind it, for that's common in video games. Except Wind Waker had a simpler one where you could merely see the mailbox moving to pick up your letter, so this feels like a downgrade. The Carpet Merchant is pretty much the epitome of blackmailing. In spite of his cool appearance, he's one person you should not buy from. He says that he's going to sell you something awesome for 200 rupees, and that he won't tell you what it is until you buy it. But when you do buy it, it turns out that it was just bomb shoes. Bomb shoes are cool, but seriously? 200 rupees? Without telling you what it is until you buy it? His Terminian counterpart was much cooler. I guess the Carpet Merchant's good for one thing though. It helps me realize something. Never buy anything from strange people unless they're working in an actual store. You're on the ghost ship trying to rescue Tetra. You see these girls who apparently got lost on the ship, and you must reunite them. I've told you guys that I don't hate escort missions that much, but this is one of those exceptions. When a Skullota appears by them, these ugly little girls start screaming, attracting the Reaplings, allowing you to get caught. This is very frustrating because you'll keep starting the missions all over thanks to these brats. When you get them together, it turns out that they were bad guys who were tricking you on purpose. Gee, didn't see that coming from the fake advice they gave me. And honestly, I'm actually happy that they were bad guys because of how I feel terrible for saying such terrible things about little girls. Either way, I hate them because of how nearly intolerable that mission was. Wait, what reason do I have for putting Capora Gamora as low as number 12 on the list? Simple. He's not entirely useless like everyone says he is. He has some use, because he tells some useful information that you wouldn't already know at the time, such as how time stands still in towns and caves, and that your songs get registered in the pause menu so memorizing them is not needed. Not to mention he can fly through places a couple times to save you all that backtracking, But that doesn't stop me from hating his guts. Some of his speeches are so obvious that he'll interrupt the game to repeat his speech when you try to climb Zora's River, no matter if you already talked to him there or not. And what is the purpose of asking if I want to hear what he said again, let alone having yes as the default option? What's worse is that the first time you encounter him, he asks, "Did you get that?" And they put no as the default option there. I know it's for new players, but is it too much to ask for more time to react? For a wise owl, he sure doesn't act wise. Sometimes you want to enjoy yourself bombing walls and burning down certain trees, looking for certain caves to get secrets from. But there are the times where you uncover a certain entrance, all of a sudden, a rude old man in it demands that you pay him for the door repair charge. Ordinarily, I would understand his anger. I mean, it's the rule that you pay if you destroy someone's property, but there's one problem with that. If you don't want people to break down your door, don't make your doorway look like a wall! If anything, that's his own fault that his door was destroyed. Zelda NES has graphical limitations, but is it really that hard? I see that they're intended to add to the game, but who in their right mind would make their door look like a wall when you're on the overworld full of bombable walls, and then scold the person who broke down your door that looked nothing like a door? Don't make your audience feel like terrible people for not knowing something that would be really hard to know. There are some characters in the franchise that you're supposed to hate, and some characters in the franchise that you're not supposed to hate. With Paps, I seriously don't know if we're supposed to hate him or not. He's a man you need to go to in order to fix the tuning nut to save Symmetry City, but he keeps accidentally saying trap instead of ceremony. That reeks of big fat liar. Either that or he's a moron. If we are supposed to hate him, what's his motivation? Why is he trying to destroy the tuning nut? Is he trying to destroy it for the sake of destroying it? What's his motivation? Why is he fixing the tuning nut anyways if he wants to destroy it? If we're supposed to hate him, he has to have an explanation for this. If we're not supposed to hate him, why does he say trap instead of ceremony? Apparently he's intended to be presented as insane. Insane people in media should either be funny or unnerving. There's nothing funny about his moronic nature, and there's nothing scary about him either. So this guy is either an unoriginal villain or a complete idiot. I think that Link should have tied him to the tracks right after getting the tuning nut fixed. The ocean. Sailing around the ocean in Phantom Hourglass isn't as atmospheric as it is in Wind Waker, but still quite atmospheric. For a portable game, the ocean sure has some amazing atmosphere. It's just so relaxing. That is, until your fun is ruined whenever this character shows up. So here's the story. She's after Limebeck because he used to work with her until he stole her treasure. So she's been out to get him ever since. And because Link has used Limebeck's boat to travel, Link has to get dragged into this. The first time she shows up, it's somewhat intense, but after this, she'll keep following you around the Great Sea and never leave you alone. Once she interrupts your gameplay, try to escape. If you don't get away from her, the game makes you fight her. And the fight isn't hard. It's nothing but time consuming. You barely get anything for defeating her anyways until you defeat her several times, and rupees are plentiful in Phantom Hourglass anyways, so what's the point of this? Good thing there's a time where she finally decides to stop following you after you beat her last challenge, but that's not until the end of the game. I didn't hate Navi nearly as much as everyone else does. I can see the reason everyone hates her, but to me, her voice was tolerable. I didn't notice her there for the majority of the game because I was so drawn into it. And no, I'm not talking about Tallow either because she learned from her mistakes later. I'm talking about Proxy. Oh man, I can't stand Proxy. You thought Navi was bad? Proxy's voice and dialogue are much worse. Shut up! Like I said, I never really hated Navi, but the developers should know that everyone hated Navi's voice. And what do? They bring in someone whose voice is even worse than Navi. And also, Link's icon appears on the screen when Proxy is talking. Why not just show Proxy? Every time she talks, I always think that it's Link who's talking. You know, the guy who's taking up most of the icon? The one who's actually talking is only taking up about a few millimeters in the picture instead of the guy who's taking up the majority of the picture. Nope, Link never talks. This wouldn't bother me, considering how Link's the silent protagonist, except there are a lot of people on the internet who insult me just for having Link talk in a comment I post. This gives these people more ground to stand on. Proxy making me think that Link is talking makes me hate this more. Though she's not the worst Zelda sidekick. I bet you know where I'm going with this. It's obvious that I was going to say that Fee is the worst Zelda sidekick. Though it's not as obvious as all the stuff that Fee says to you. She always tells you the most obvious stuff. For instance, how you're low on hearts or how your battery is running out, despite that beeping noise that they make. A lot of times when I think that she's going to give me some important information, she's really telling me stuff I already know. When she left at the end of the game, I only felt sad because of the music, which I'll admit is probably my pick for the most depressing song in all of gaming, but overall I hate Fee. And yes, I pronounced it wrong. I'm just used to pronouncing it like this. But thankfully, she's much more tolerable in Hyrule Warriors. Now back to Twilight Princess. What do we talk about now? Oh goody, the most boring part of the game. Remember the Lost Woods and Ocarina of Time? Those were pretty annoying at times, but they usually take me around the span of 2 minutes. When you get to them in Twilight Princess, they take around the span of 20 minutes. 20 minutes of searching through the Lost Woods. And they have no charm whatsoever like the original did. The music is a bland, generic, and uninspired remix of what was an awesome song in the original game. Look, I know this is darker than most Zelda games, but generic and dark are not the same thing. You have to follow the Skull Kid to help you get through, except he sometimes hides from you, making him hard to see, so you'll wander in circles, aimlessly around the woods. You must attack him, but he will summon some enemies after you. It's not the enemies that bug me. It's the fact that he summons them by blowing a trumpet that has an incredibly irritating sound. The reason I talked about how generic this forest is when I was talking about the Skull Kid, they could at least just show me the way through and make it not as long than just playing an annoying game. To make matters worse, you are forced to go through these woods twice. Christine, the goat lady from Link's Awakening. Maybe I'm overreacting to this, for she's not an important character in the game. She's a part of a trading sequence and not much else to it. But I have my explanation. While I love trading sequences, this one included, I hate her for what she represents. Once you give her the hibiscus flower, she asks you to deliver a letter to Mr. Right in order to get the broom from him. But when you get to him and give him the letter, you find out that the letter that Christine made you give to Mr. Right turned out to be a love letter, and that she sent a picture of Peach to make Mr. Right think that Christine looked like Peach, and it's hard to say no to someone who looks like Peach, so now he wants to date Christine, unaware that Christine is a goat lady. Do you guys know what this means? Christine deceived someone into going out with her who isn't even the same species as her, and she tricked you into helping her with it. But what I also hate about this is that this is like on the internet, where people pretend to be an 18-year-old girl when they're really a 40-year-old man. Newsflash, Link's Awakening is a kid's game. Not to mention, since the trading sequence is practically required, unless you want to wander around aimlessly in the final dungeon, Mr. Right will be almost guaranteed into being tricked into marry her. Some will argue, why do you hate her for one thing she did? Well, it's the only thing she was seen doing in the game. I don't like the spoiled brat type of character. As such, I hate Princess Ruto. If you gave Veruca Salt the Zora mask and have her stand right next to Ruto, it would take someone with the intelligence of Albert Einstein to tell the difference. Once you win the silver scale and use it to get to Lake Hylia, you'll see a letter in the bottle in Lake Hylia saying that she's trapped inside Jabu Jabu and that she needs your help to rescue her. So when you go inside Jabu Jabu, you talk to her. When you tell her that you're here to save her, she responds by being an ungrateful snot. If she didn't want any help, why did she send the letter? Heck, the game itself points that out. Pointing out your own plot holes doesn't make them go away. After she gets captured by Baronade, And after you save her, instead of thanking you, she acts more ungrateful for not saving her earlier. Then suddenly, her mood turns a complete 180 and finally decides to thank you. And if you want the Zora Sapphire, which you need in order to save the world, she forces you to marry her. Because the fate of the world is not as important as some family tradition leading to a bestiality marriage between a human and a Zora, let alone someone who she just met. I think Kristoff might want to have a word with you. I hope Zelda punches Princess Ruto in the face. And is it me, or does Ruto seem like a horribly bad ripoff of Ariel? Tingle was going to be number 1, but he doesn't tick me off as much as the top 2. Don't let that innocent, happy-go-lucky smile fool you. Deep down inside, he has pretty much nothing likable about him. In Majora's Mask, he does sell you maps, but he goes through a long and stupid speech about his obsession with fairies before finally selling you the map he wants to sell you. For someone who loves rupees so much, sell me the maps already! Do you want my money or not? And during the wedding at the end of the game, he blocks Cafe so we can't see him. Way to ruin a nice scene, you green doofus! But worst of all is in Wind Waker. To get the Triforce shards, which you'll need to stop Ganondorf, ask him to decipher the Triforce shards. Each costs 398 rupees. And because you have to get 8 of them deciphered, that's a total of 3,184 rupees. That is one of the cheapest displays I have ever seen. And if you add in the 201 rupees for the incredible chart, that adds to a total of 3,385 rupees. Some will say that the game Tinkle's Rupee Land, yeah, the Screen Menace actually has its own game, clarifies that Tingle does this because he was told that rupees are his life. I see that as nothing more than an excuse to justify Tinkle's greed. I know that these games were made because he was actually popular in Japan, but for me, this character is completely unlikable, and he's a 35-year-old man who has carvings of children on his island. There's nothing disturbing about that. It's very satisfying watching people bash on this guy. The Oracle versions of Kotaki and Kao, also known as Twinrova. In Ocarina of Time, I don't have anything against Twinrova, aside from the bad stuff they do in the game, which is what they want you to hate them for. In the Oracle games, however, these two old hags ruined what could have been 2 awesome endings. For the link ending between 2 games that have 2 awesome conflicts, the finale to this game is horrible. We have an evil general who threw the seasons into chaos, and we have an evil sorceress who almost ruined the future. They would have been awesome villains, but no, they're merely puppets being controlled by these 2 wretched hags. Because of them, Onyx and Veron didn't get to use their full power against Link, because part of their plans were that they had to die in order to light 2 of the flames. No wonder Veron had a turtle for a final form. And now I know why her final form ended way too quickly. They were 30% evil thanks to these stupid old witches. All that awesome stuff they did, nothing but a ruse to light the flames of destruction and sorrow to bring back Ganon. Why? If it weren't for Fart Brova, Onyx and Veron probably would have been my favorite villains in the franchise. And don't give me the excuse that Zan and Girahim had the same fate, because at least they were puppets to someone awesome. Some might like this twist, but I personally see it as a slap to the face. And notice how despite that I talked about the worst part, I haven't talked about the ending yet. Instead of building up your intensity like most final dungeons in the Zelda series, the Room of Rites is nothing but making it through a maze where everything looks the same. Before you call me out for my hypocrisy in saying that the Lost Woods were passable, the Lost Woods had charm, and they weren't the final dungeon of the game. And the fight with Twinrova isn't as unique as it was in Ocarina, because here, you just hit the energy balls back at each other. I get that it's because of graphical limitations, but come on! Try to have some creativity. The Dead Man's Volley thing has been done a lot in the Zelda series so far. In the second phase, instead of something creative, it requires you to hit them a couple times and shoot them with a seed, with the one redeeming factor being the arena changing. The fight with Ganon isn't so bad, but guess what? And if you lose to them, they start you back to the Room of Rites, which wasn't fun or challenging. I want to burn Kotaki down with a flamethrower, and I want to lock Kao in the freezer for the rest of her life. At least they didn't make me forget about how awesome these games were. unlike the number 1 entry on this list. Before we get to number 1, let's recap. Number 15, the Postman from Twilight Princess. Number 14, Mr. Blackmailer. Number 13, the Cuba Sisters. Number 12, Capora Gabora. Number 11, the old man who keeps demanding you for the door repair charge. Number 10, Patch the Idiot. Number 9, Stop Interrupting My Sailing. Number 8, Shut Up! Number 7, Captain Obvious. Number 6, Skull Kid from Twilight Princess. Number 5, Christine. Number 4, Princess Brat. Number 3, Mr. Krabs' long-lost cousin. And number 2, Twinrova. You're probably not going to expect this, but we're up to number 1, and despite Twilight Princess being my favorite Zelda game, this is the 3rd character from that game to make on this list, and the one that I feel is undoubtedly the worst character in the game, and undoubtedly the most annoying character in the entire franchise, Agatha! You know about those obnoxious fangirls who won't stop squealing at the sight of people like Justin Bieber or Edward Cullen? Agatha is almost literally the Zelda equivalent of that. Agatha is so obsessed with insects that when you walk in, she mistakes you for a grasshopper. Maybe this is a callback to Majora's Mask, but in that situation, Grasshopper was Romani's little nickname for Link. But this game establishes that Agatha is so obsessed with insects that she'll literally mistake a human being for one. I'd be surprised if a Justin Bieber fangirl would act like that. Her obsession is shown more since to get a bigger wallet, you are required to bring her enough insects. And she has an ear-bleeding fangirl squeal. Now, if she likes bugs, that's fine. If she likes to have insects at her house, that's fine. But why does she say the most unhealthy lines whenever you bring her an insect? Mistaking an ant for a grain and putting it in her cereal? Using a dayfly's tail to make a braid? I think we're gonna be sick. Will you please excuse me for a second? Oh, you thought that was bad? Well, she's apparently singing those lines. I do not want to know what her singing voice sounds like. I'll admit that she is a kid, so she doesn't know better. I still gotta ask, why does she exist? No, seriously, how exactly does a squealing fangirl who squeals over the sight of insects fit anywhere in one of Nintendo's most serious franchises, let alone the most serious installment in the series? If you happen to have bugs with you when you leave her house, she'll even say in a creepy tone that she knows you have bugs. That makes me despise this creep with a burning passion. Jeez, it's no wonder they didn't show up at your quote-unquote bug ball. Oh, you thought that was bad? Well, guess what? Because this game is a very common subject for Let's Players, especially Zelda Let's Players, combined with the fact that a lot of Let's Players on the internet are completionists, that means for every Let's Play of this game, I have to sit through those unsettling lines multiple times every time I watch a Twilight Princess Let's Play. It always makes me nervous about seeing a Let's Play of this game because of having to see her and those unnerving dialogue boxes constantly. It makes me forget about how much of an awesome game Twilight Princess is. It's still my favorite Zelda game, but Agatha is so unsettlingly creepy. If I were an insect, Agatha would be my worst nightmare. And she's a playable character in Hyrule Warriors. Should we bring in a power-hungry general? Nope. Should we bring in an evil sorceress who can shapeshift? Nope. Let's bring in the spoiled brat who obsesses over insects. She couldn't do anything remotely related to fighting before Hyrule Warriors. At least the villagers' inclusion in Smash was funny and made a tiny bit of sense, considering all the Nintendo references in the Animal Crossing games. Heck, Princess Ruto being in Hyrule Warriors made sense because, 1, she's the Sage of Water, and 2, because Majora's Mask has proven that Zoras can fight. And unlike the Cuba Sisters, I do not feel terrible for hating her. Agatha overall is disturbing, annoying, and nearly useless, making her my number 1 most hated character in the franchise.